I've always had a passion for being around and learning about animals. When I was younger, going to zoos and animal parks was always a part of my life. I wanted to share my passion with family and friends, so I started working with people that loved animals as much as I did, and my YouTube channel was born.
Welcome back to my animal education series. Today we're at the St. Louis Zoo and we're going to do a video on the burying beetle. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And now I'm here with Dylan to talk about the burying beetles. So, what do you want people to know about the burying beetles?
Mostly, the burying beetle is kind of an unusual animal. So as far as insects go, it has parental care, which is incredibly rare among insects. So the mother and the father actually stay with the babies and feed them on carrion, which is dead animals. And the really kind of interesting thing that I guess that we here at the zoo want people to know about them is, A, the American burying beetle is on the endangered species list. Most people don't think of bugs being on the endangered species list. It's kind of a weird thing. People just think, oh, there's bugs everywhere. You just squish them when you see them. This is a beetle that has lost maybe about 90% of its original range. It used to be very common east of the Rocky Mountains. Now it's in like 2 or 3 very small isolated populations. And so what we here at St. Louis Zoo do is we reproduce them in large quantities. We've got somewhere over 400 beetles at this very moment. And then we take them and are making an attempt to repatriate them out into the wild. So that's kind of what our MO is here, is to hopefully save this species that is actually a very gorgeous beetle.
Well, I've seen pictures of it like when I was doing my research. It's very beautiful, like a really bright red color.
Yeah, yeah.
So why do people think that they're going endangered?
That's a really tough question. So we don't know, scientists don't know. There's not really a whole lot of people studying this beetle, which is kind of a sad thing. The people that do study them have a few theories. Obviously things like overuse of pesticides are going to be a problem. Habitat loss, which is basically the case with almost every endangered species. But there's an unusual case of an additional animal going extinct that we think potentially has an impact on this. So the American burying beetle uses carrion, and it's very picky about what type of carrion it uses. It needs to be right in this specific range of size. And that size happens to be about the size of a pigeon. We use quail here to breed them, to feed them. And the burying beetle population really started declining right around the time that the passenger pigeon went extinct. And so one of the major theories that's kind of competing right now is that with the extinction of the passenger pigeon, which is a massive amount of carrion for these animals, I mean, you're talking flocks of millions of birds, there's going to be a lot of dead birds around. And that beetle is probably using those dead birds to feed their young. So when the passenger pigeon just suddenly vanished like it did, potentially what we think is that the burying beetle has really taken a hit from that.
So what do people think, or I don't know if anyone knows this yet, but what do you guys think that they're eating up now?
It's a lot of kind of anything in like the 100-gram range of dead animals. I mean, they'll take fish, they'll take rats. There's a species of rat called the cotton rat that lives on the prairie where we've been releasing these, and we think that that is a large portion of the carrion they use. Baby rabbits fit that description. Quail, like I said, there's several species of birds, regular mourning doves, things like that. They're not really picky about what type of carrion, they're really picky about the size. So really anything that fits that size is a-okay. But the increase in scavengers, because of roadkill animals and things like that, raccoons and possums are having a massive impact on the availability of that carrion. So even if there are a lot of birds or fish or whatever dying on the prairie, raccoons and possums are getting to it first a lot of the times, because the beetle takes a little bit. I mean, they're not fast animals. So it's kind of a weird balancing act. We're lucky that the prairie we're releasing things on does not have a large population of possums and raccoons. And that's basically because there's no edge habitat. It's a massive prairie for acres and acres and acres, and possums and raccoons don't like that type of habitat. They tend to stick to woodlands a little more. So that's basically one of the primary reasons we're using that place.
So you mentioned that, like, what are some other qualifications that you look for in an area to release these beetles at?
The biggest one is permission. This is an endangered species, so you have to really work very closely with landowners. Most landowners, if you say, hey, can I put endangered beetles on your property, they're going to say absolutely not, because that's going to limit what they can and can't do with their land. If there's an endangered species of beetle on this farmer's land, he can't till his crops anymore. He can't do anything that he would do. He can't be spraying pesticides. So working very closely with landowners and nature groups such as the Nature Conservancy and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, or Missouri Department of Conservation. It requires a lot of us kind of working with them.
So are these beetles making a comeback currently?
It's too early to tell. So we've been releasing beetles on that prairie. It's roughly around 400 beetles a year. We've been releasing them there for, this is going on our 7th year, I believe, maybe 8th. And so what we do is we will survey the land before, and we're lucky because the American burying beetle is very easy to survey for. We just put a piece of dead chicken in basically a bucket in the ground. They go for the dead chicken, fall in the bucket, and they're trapped there. So we can just pick them up and notch them. We mark every single beetle we get in our hands, so we kind of know who's who on the prairie. And so we'll survey before the release, then we'll do the release, and then we'll survey after the release. So we pretty much survey all the way from like almost now, we're getting really close to survey season, all the way through late September sometimes, depending on the weather. And that gives us kind of an idea of what's going on that prairie. Are there beetles? Are there new beetles? Because every beetle we release is marked, so that way if we catch it in a trap, we know, okay, this is our beetle. If we get a beetle that's not marked, we know for sure that that beetle was produced on the prairie completely naturally. And every single year, the number of new beetles has been going up. So all of our data is very positive, but we're still there. We're still putting beetles on that prairie. So we don't really know if these beetles can kind of stand on their own 2 legs yet until we pull out. Once we stop putting beetles in that prairie, we'll continue to survey, obviously.
So how hard is it to get them to reproduce? Because you use quail to kind of feed them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what is all the breeding process with it?
It's actually really simple. We've kind of developed our husbandry techniques over the years. We've been doing this for a while, and other zoos have been doing the burying beetle stuff for a while as well. There's a few other institutions that work with us, and basically what we've kind of all settled on is what works is you basically take a 5-gallon bucket, you fill it with soil almost to the top, you put a dead bird in there, quail in our case, and you put a male beetle and a female beetle, and you put them in there, and you close the bucket and then forget about it for a while. What they'll do then is take that quail, they'll bury it underground, and the female will lay eggs on that dead quail, and they kind of embalm it. It's actually very interesting. They'll pluck all the feathers off it and use the secretion that they put out to kind of embalm this animal. It looks like a gross meatball. It's like this slimy, stinky meatball. But then that kind of preserves the meat a little bit for their young. And so the mother and the father both will stay there and feed those grubs and kind of nurse them, make sure they reach adulthood. Because without mother and father, the grubs have a significantly less chance of making it to adulthood, making it to pupation stage. And that's basically all there is. We just check the buckets every once in a while. We know how long it takes for the eggs to hatch. We know how long it takes for grubs to get to pupa. We know how long it takes pupa to adult. So we kind of just peek at them every once in a while. Sometimes we'll dig up and kind of see what's really going on. But most of the time it's kind of just, okay, we know there's beetles in there. We know they're making babies. We just leave them alone until we know it's time to break the bucket there and get the new beetles out, hopefully.
Well, it seems like you're enjoying it and you're very enthusiastic about
Yeah,
it. So
I do.
I guess it's a lot better than just like not liking it. Well, deal with a bunch of beetles now.
Yeah,
Have to go to work and deal with beetles.
It takes a special type of person. They're not exactly the most charismatic. They look very pretty, but you touch them and they immediately start excreting this liquid that smells like the food they eat, which is dead animals. So they stink. They stain your hands up with this kind of brown liquid. They can bite if they choose to. I've been bitten by them before. And they're just they're carrion beetles. They like dead animals, so they're kind of stinky and gross. It takes a special type of person to fall in love with and want to actually save an animal like that. Most of the public would look at them and be like, ooh, but I find something charming about them.
And they're very good in the environment because if they're taking dead animals out of the environment, it's less just waste hanging around.
Absolutely, yeah. They provide a very, very important ecological service. Anything that is removing carrion from the environment is basically decreasing disease and things like that that breed in dead animals. So they do provide a very, very important ecological nature value to us.
Because if I'm going on a hike out in the woods, I don't want to see a bunch of dead birds and
right.
small rabbits or anything just laying on the ground, because then it would make me not want to go hiking anymore.
Exactly.
Well, the animals like these, like the raccoons, possums, vultures, like just kind of takes that problem away from us.
Yes,
Probably
absolutely.
many other scavengers and other dead carrion eaters I'm not thinking of.
Oh, there's a ton of just in the insect world. There's a trillion of them. It seems like so. But yeah, it's a very important thing, and it's a very useful thing for us as humans. So it's good to save the berry bee.